From the CISO Series, it's cybersecurity headlines.
Ford says cars with Wi-Fi vulnerability are still safe to drive. Lockbit struggles to publish leaked data, and 67% of government agencies claim confidence in adopting zero trust. These are some of the stories that my colleagues and I have been bringing to you on this week's cybersecurity headlines. And now we get a chance for some insight, opinion, and expertise on these stories and more from our guest, Jon Oltsik, the distinguished analyst and fellow at Enterprise Strategy Group. Jon, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate your time.
Rich, it's great to be here, and thanks for having me.
Before I move on to the news, we have to thank our sponsor for today, Vesa. Secure your identity access everywhere. Remember, we are going on YouTube Live right now. You can go to CISOseries.com, hit the events drop down, and look for the Cybersecurity Headlines Week in Review image. It is the third one down. You can click on it to join us. If you are watching us right now, remember, you can contribute your comments in the chat. We'd like to get to these during the show, maybe getting it toward the end. Get your thoughts on the news of today. Let us know what you think about what me and Jon are going to be talking about. We really want to hear what you think. We value your feedback. We've got about 20 minutes, though. We're not going to wait for you to start commenting. We're going to get right into it. The first one, big news. Ford says cars with Wi-Fi vulnerabilities are still safe to drive. It's a nice bonus. The Ford Motor Corporation is alerting consumers of a buffer overflow vulnerability in its Sync 3 infotainment system that is built into many Ford and Lincoln vehicles, but it says that vehicle driving safety isn't impacted. The vulnerability affects a range of vehicles from 2021 to 2022 model years. Ford says it will make a software patch available soon, which customers are able to load on a USB stick and install on their vehicles. So it looks like we have lost Jon here for just a moment. And I'm going to try and bring him back on here. Jon, I think we got disconnected for a moment, but we were just setting up the Ford Wi-Fi vulnerability, buffer overflow. They're going to be sending USB sticks to install updates on the devices. So my question for you, Jon, we don't want to make this about a story about Ford per se. Every car and truck on the road is a rolling computer in some sort these days. But I'm curious, with this vulnerability, we see these kind of things in cybersecurity. What concerns, I guess, do you have about the state of vehicle cybersecurity generally from the standpoint of threat actors?
We've seen attacks on vehicles for a number of years, dating back to a few DEF CONs ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago. The problem here is that we kind of don't know what we don't know. So we don't have a lot of information about the infrastructure, the network infrastructure in vehicles. But we do know that there are vulnerabilities, and we've generally seen that a vulnerability that can be exploited to a greater extent than most of the manufacturers believe. Now, in this case, Ford is saying that you don't have to patch this yet. And that may be true. They may be watching the threat intelligence to see if it's exploitable. What concerns me is sending out a memory stick or a thumb drive. I mean, who's to say I can't print up a Ford logo, put some malware on a thumb drive, and send it out to random customers? I can definitely buy a list of those customers who've purchased Ford vehicles. And it's not limited to Ford, as you say. So it is concerning. It really just shows that connectivity can be problematic, as we just saw with my connectivity. But vulnerabilities are real, and you should be paying attention. Ford should be paying attention to, again, the exploitability of the vulnerability, and probably figure out a better way to patch it than send out USB sticks.
Yeah, I can just imagine someone that's done any security training ever is beating their head against well. It's like, this is what we have trained people to try not to do for 20 years. And you're begging people to do this. Just take it to the dealership. If you have any questions, folks, take it to the dealership. At least you're limiting your threat surface there.
I'll just say that I've been to RSA conference, Black Hat, and vendors still give out USB sticks with their literature. And this is a security conference. Are you kidding me? But people just default to poor behavior.
All right, our next story here. Lockbit struggles to publish leaked data. Analyst One chief security strategist John DiMaggio published a report showing that the pernicious ransomware group shows signs of critical operational problems impacting its ability to run its criminal enterprise. He points to a recently announced update to its infrastructure that seems to try to cover up that it still cannot consistently host and publish large amounts of victim data through its admin panel. It's as other evidence, it's also seemingly failed to publish victim data for refusal to pay in several instances and missed a promised window to ship updated ransomware. It's having trouble giving updates to its customers from a business perspective. DiMaggio reports several affiliate clients left Lockbit in favor of competitors as a result. John, it's always refreshing to see the bad guys suffering from the same management and procedure problems as legitimate enterprises. Of course, this kind of comes down to, management strategies for organized cybercrime organizations. Is the danger here, I guess, that if they solve this, right, they're just a better cybercrime organization? I'm curious, what's your take?
Yeah. So first of all, kudos to John DiMaggio, because you don't get this by reading the New York Times or the Wall Street
Yeah.
Journal or even any of our media publications. So he had to do some deep and dark web research, probably on some chat boards, hearing some complaining from employees. Yeah, I mean, business operations are difficult to scale. You need operations expertise. That's not necessarily the skill set of a threat actor. A lot of this is distributed, a lot of it is outsourced, and that has to be coordinated. But I think, dismiss this at your own peril. It just says that, yes, a major threat actor is having some operational problems. They'll likely solve them. People will go elsewhere and they'll attack from other platforms, attack through other organizations. So you kind of summed it up. I mean, operational problems exist. Yes, we found one here in the threat adversary community, but we still need to be vigilant.
Yeah, it makes you realize the level that ransomware is at, where they're trying to operate at such a scale that they're having problems of scale, right? And added to the fact that they can't use, they can't just go to Azure or spin up an AWS instance to host all their stuff. So it will be interesting to see if this shifts anything. Lockbit obviously has been responsible for a huge amount of attacks over the last couple of years. So interested to see if that shakes up the market for ransomware, so to speak.
Yeah, and if you're a COO with maybe some Russian language skills, maybe there's a job opportunity for you.
Please, the CISO series is not recommending you apply for a job.
Just joking, just joking.
All right, our next story here. 67% of government agencies claim confidence in adopting zero trust. According to a new report from Swimlane, quoted in Security Magazine, 67% of government agencies are confident or very confident they are prepared to meet the zero trust requirements laid out by the U.S. government's Memorandum M2209. Almost 2/3 of agencies who responded to the Swimlane researchers stated that they are choosing low-code security automation as their primary tool for meeting the memorandum's guidelines. However, an equal number, 64% of federal agencies, report it takes longer to fill a security position now than it did 2 years ago, with 1/3 believing they will never have a fully staffed security team with the proper skills. Shout out to defeatism. John, two key topics here. What are your thoughts about the civil service confidence in zero trust and tying that to low code automation? And also, I guess, what do you make of their less than optimistic vision of staffing and skilling?
Yeah, let me start with the second point, and that is the skill set is not getting any better. So kudos to the Biden administration for putting some programs in place recently to attack that. But research that we've done in cooperation with ISSA suggests that it's not getting any better. And if you're a CISO, you need a strategy because you're not going to be able to hire your way out of this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, federal agencies with zero trust. So they're obligated to put together a plan under OMB. I think it's 2209, M2209. There are 5 pillars to that plan, and those are identity, devices, networks, applications and workloads, and data. There's a lot to unpack there. But the NIST standard talks about the fact that zero trust initiatives are not only underway, but they've been underway for a long time. So I've got confidence in what I've done Do I have confidence in reaching my milestones by 2024? I don't know. I mean, these are ambitious milestones. Again, I give credit to the federal government for taking them on, for doing such a good job of outlining things with the OMB standard and the DoD standard. But there's a lot to do here, and so I think there's confidence that they know how to get started. They have some milestones they have to start by. But in terms of a full zero trust program, it's a tall order. It's a really in-depth specification, and I'd be surprised if most federal agencies can meet that. Now, no code, low code automation, very important, especially for kind of the busy work that you need here. Aggregating alert data, understanding policy data and policy enforcement data. But that's the tip of the iceberg. So I think the data is interesting to look at, but grain of salt for me.
Yeah, get that low hanging fruit, and as you're spinning up these other initiatives that are going to be a lot harder to kind of pull off long term. So I appreciate the perspective on that. That is awesome. That's what we love to hear. Next up here, experts ask FTC to modernize health breach notification rules. The window for public comments regarding the FTC's proposed changes to its health breach notification rules closed this week. A number of consumer protection and privacy organizations asked for the adoption of these changes, mentioning the inadequacy of current health privacy regulations. For example, numerous apps collect health data and share it with third parties for marketing and other purposes. And you may say, that's not cool, but those practices are not covered by HIPAA. So, John, the proposed changes include clarifying the health breach notification rules can be applied to health apps and similar technologies not covered by HIPAA, clarifying what constitutes breach of security and unauthorized disclosure, and expanding requirements for what consumers whose data has been breached should be told. I'm just curious your thoughts, real quick.
Yeah, three quick points for me. One is that HIPAA and high tech are really old. And at the same time, even if you think post-pandemic, the healthcare industry is changing really rapidly. Think about telemedicine, think about online portals, think about wearable devices. So things are changing very quickly. Now, one other point is, in a financial services organization, about 30% of the total amount of data that they have would be classified as sensitive or confidential. In a healthcare organization, about 90% of the data that they hold is considered sensitive or even regulated. And think about it. I mean, it's data about our health. It's about our insurance, about the state of our health, and that's very valuable to adversaries. So, yeah, it's really time to modernize health breach notification. It's time to modernize breach notification in general. Like, why do we still have 48 states in the United States and different territories that have their own health or breach notification? And who are the states that don't have them?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
anyway, absolutely, it's time to modernize health breach notification rules. Enough said.
Change all the breach notification rules. I like that attitude. So hopefully we see some movement on that for sure. Before we move on to our next story, though, we have to have a word from our sponsor for today, Vesa. 75% of breaches happen because of bad permissions. The problem is that you don't know who exactly has access to what data in your environment. For example, roles labeled as read only can often edit and delete sensitive data. Vesa automatically finds and fixes every bad permission in every app across your environment. Learn more at Vesa.com. China claims it will disclose U.S. global reconnaissance systems. This is a story that's been rumbling underfoot for a little bit now. According to the Chinese state newspaper, The Global Times, Chinese authorities will disclose evidence of U.S. military intelligence agencies targeting civilian infrastructure, particularly targeting seismological data. Officials claim this activity disrupted seismographic monitoring capabilities, although it's unclear if this indicates use of malware. I'm thinking something like Stuxnet or something like that. We just don't know. We know there was a claim disruption. We always like to include, intriguing new ways of practicing cybercrime or espionage when we can. That's part of cybersecurity. I'm curious though, John, do you have any insight into this collection with seismological data?
No, no direct insight. It may be a proof of concept type of attack. There may be a link between the seismological data or the seismological systems and other government systems. That would be my guess.
Hmm.
But I mean, clearly NSA is doing things that we don't know about. China's obviously done lots of things that we don't know about or that we've discovered surreptitiously. And so I'm not really, I don't really have much intelligence here, other than to say I believe it. I believe there's probably something real there. I also believe there's PR value for the Chinese to disclose this type of information, as there is for the United States. So it's, spy versus spy stuff.
Yeah, both of these, cyber espionage, whatever you want to call it, is part of their statecraft at this point, firmly part of it. It's just the US acknowledges we have some agencies and China doesn't. And that's pretty, I mean, like, you want to get into what they specifically are doing, but both of them definitely using it as part of, their foreign policy for sure.
Yeah, reconnaissance is a given, and as old as as old as dirt, I guess is the expression. But when you start interfering with systems and critical infrastructure, that's different. So if we've taken that step, if the U.S. has taken that step, then I'm sure there's a lot of concern on both sides.
For sure. Next up here, the attackers are coming from inside the app. According to an analysis of over 400 malware families by Recorded Future's Insect Group, attackers increasingly find ways to blend into legitimately used services as a way to breach networks. Cloud storage proved the most commonly abused services by category, followed by messaging apps, email services, and social media. If we're talking about individual apps, Telegram proved the most common, followed by Discord. I don't think any of those are too surprising. Slack and Trello seem to be favorite vectors of some Russian groups. So, John, InfoStealers represented the most commonly deployed malware in this approach, but there is a lot of focus on easy to use and easy to install communication apps and collaboration suites used by people who are just trying to get stuff done. I'm curious, in your experience, are organizations behind the times in setting up policies for these, cloud-based conveniences?
They are, but they're catching up. So if you look at what the federal government, and this was a presidential directive on software bills of materials for all federal agencies and all companies that do business with the federal agencies, that's what we're after here. Is we want to understand what's in the software. A lot of times it's open source. We've seen exploitation of that with Log4j and things like that. But we've also seen commercial software being breached. So, yeah, this is a cyber supply chain issue, and so you really should know what your software suppliers are doing, how much security they put in, what do they do in their development cycle, what do they do in their test cycle, are they training their employees, are they doing background checks on their employees, all those things. And large organizations do that to some extent. They don't do it as extensively as they should. And this is just another example of, if you take your eye off something, it's bound to turn into a vulnerability. So just more due diligence, better diligence in general.
Our next story here, Clorox takes servers offline following unauthorized activity. On Monday, the cleaning product giant Clorox reported in its annual 10-K filing to the SEC that it fell victim to a cybersecurity attack. The incident forced the company to take some systems offline and implement workarounds to continue servicing customers. Clorox also noted that it's seen a rise in cyber attacks since shifting to a remote work model. John, interesting to note that Clark seems to bring the work from home mode into the discussion, especially at an early juncture in a cyber attack assessment and mitigation. Take the spotlight off Clark specifically and to kind of expand to companies in general. Do you think that blaming the work from home model is a good idea? And if so, shouldn't companies themselves be doing more to secure their remote environments?
No, it's not a good idea. It's not a good idea. No, so if you go back to the beginning of the pandemic, everyone worked from home. All of a sudden, we were on Zoom. So the first chore for organizations was get people connected. And so that meant VPNs, it meant spinning up Zoom. And then once that was done, there was a general focus on security, because we recognized people would be coming in from insecure networks. They may be using personal devices. Their kids may be on the network. And they may share different systems. So we saw a tremendous spike at the beginning of the pandemic in these types of attacks. So with all due respect to Clorox, they should have known that remote workers increase risk. And therefore, you need to understand those risks. You need to present those risks to people who have budget uh, accessibility, budget permissions, and you have to contain or mitigate those risks where you can. Now, you can't do 100%, but to at this juncture to talk about the risks associated with remote workers, that's just ancient history in security.
Yeah, that seems like that dog don't hunt anymore. Maybe April 2020, I would have been a little bit more sympathetic to that. But yeah, this should be well incorporated into any risk model at this point. You would think, right?
You would think, what are they going to do next? Blame the Melissa virus? The I love you virus? Come on.
I was going to say, oh well, we have Wi-Fi, so that makes it riskier to
Well,
something
we
like
know,
that.
but you're right. But we understand the risks associated with Wi-Fi, and there are really good, strong controls there. So I don't get it.
Clean it up, Clorox is what I say. All right, our last story here. LinkedIn accounts hacked in widespread hijacking campaign. On Tuesday, a wave of LinkedIn user reports surfaced indicating their accounts had been locked out or hijacked by attackers, and also that they were having difficulty resolving their issues through LinkedIn support. CyberInt researchers said the attackers are using leaked credentials or brute forcing to take over poorly protected LinkedIn accounts and then swapping the associated emails address with one from the rambler.ru service. CyberInt also said that the threat actors were pressuring some users to pay a ransom to regain control of their accounts. I guess, we have to give 10 points to Gryffindor on the creativity front here. Capturing individual LinkedIn accounts seems quite novel, at least for LinkedIn. And given the unique space that LinkedIn holds, millions of people have become quite dependent on it, whether you're talking about, sales leads or all sorts of just business networking kind of rides on the back of that. I'm curious, what suggestions do you have for our audience to kind of street smart their profiles? I mean, but is it just as simple as 2FA, or is there anything more we can do?
Well, I think with LinkedIn, we've all been on it for so long that we set it up. We put in the login credentials in different devices, and we set it and forget it. And you just can't do that in security. Especially the tools have improved in terms of password cracking. And while you might be dismissive of, well, LinkedIn isn't that important to me. I look at news and I look at connections and things. It's a really good device for adversaries. It's another way to compromise your identity. It's a good for things like, well, what's generally known as business email compromise, but acting as an imposter for some action. So
Mhm.
maybe I reach out to you from my LinkedIn and I ask you to send me other credentials for other people. Maybe I ask you to pay an invoice and I say I can't reach you using your corporate email. Something. So it's problematic. And so I would say, yeah, two-factor authentication, change your passwords, good hygiene. It goes a long way. It's also, I mean, if you're a potential target of an attack, where people can use your credentials to escalate privileges and things like that, then you should be especially careful.
Yeah, I would say in the wake of all of the Twitter X kerfuffles we've seen over the last, I don't know, 6, 7 months, and with LinkedIn and stuff like that, it's just given me more of an impetus to take my networking kind of more into my own hands. Whether that's I just get email, I've just update my Rolodex or my contacts or whatever you have. I feel like that is also kind of an underappreciated. Hey, let's depend less on these platforms so I could text someone or email and say, hey, did you really just send me this weird, shady, sales proposal or something like that? I feel like that's another part that's a little bit underappreciated too, for sure.
Yeah, I think so. And it's a sad kind of statement on where we are today, but anywhere where you can be exposed, you probably will be exposed. So you have to take that attitude and really just maintain the vigilance that you can.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, John, was there any story that you reacted strongly to, a favorite, one that just made the eyes roll to the back of your head? What stood out to you in the rundown today?
Well, a couple of them. The
You got to
Fords,
choose one. You got to choose one.
I'll choose one, and I'll just go with the one that we started with. Ford sending USB drives to customers. So first of all, they have to. I mean, have you ever used a USB drive in your car? Probably not. I haven't. I mean, I know there are USB ports. Of course, I have a couple of old cars, but maybe they know how to do that. Maybe you can see that in the manual. But again, from a hygiene perspective, unless that USB is trusted, maybe they send you an out of band password to get into that, and then you have to put in that password in your car. I don't know. It just sounds very jury rigged to me.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jon Oltsik, the distinguished analyst and fellow at Enterprise Strategy Group. I truly, truly appreciate your time, your wisdom. You're just dropping the great takes here on the show today. Where can people find you online if they are so inclined on the cyberspace?
Well, I am on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
I My Twitter profile is JOLTSIK, and you can find me at esg-global.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you once again. We will have to have you on again because this was fantastic. Thank you also to our sponsor, Veza. Secure your identity access everywhere. Also, thanks to everyone that was watching live today. Truly appreciate everybody in the live stream. And remember, you can join us every Friday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 12:30 p.m. Pacific. Join in, chat with us, watch along, ask some questions. You might get some answers. We love seeing you there. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Weekend Review Show. Never fear, we will not abandon you. If you need more of a daily fix, you can, of course, get it through cybersecurity headlines every single day. Give us about 6 minutes and you will be all caught up on the news of the day. Until the next time we meet, I'm Rich Stroffolino, reminding you to have a super sparkly day.
Cybersecurity headlines are available every weekday. Head to CISOSeries.com for the full stories behind the headlines.